Calling you a radical. Sorry about that last video. I mean, I'm a one-man band. I had it backwards. I was up there, but I grew up right here. And, you know, everything that was said in that video is so accurate, but let's do this right. And so, the Bear River Massacre, 158 years ago, yesterday. Now, I always go. But, by the way, I thought it was incredibly irresponsible to go this year because of COVID, and COVID is ravishing through that community. I see Darren Perry. Now, by the way, anything Darren Perry says, take it with a grain of salt. 90% of the so-called Shoshone, they hate him. You know, he'll give a prayer because he's the Mormon Shoshone. When you say, thank you, Jesus Christ, thank you, and they wave the American flag, that's what Darren Perry does. When, come on, the United States government fucking went in there and mass murdered those people. Connors fucking worked for the United States military. They marched with flags and murdered 512 women and children 30 below. Why they slap. This is irony because I told you Blake Moore is as ignorant as they get. I helped get him elected. So he was there. Darren Perry says, I've never heard of it. He got on the floor and he's actually crying like a little baby. The cops had to come guard my wife and her kid's house because Trump wanted to kill me, but I support Trump. It's unfucking believable. By the way, I think them even having the event this year, I could see he was there, you know, blowing the smooch, which they always do on me. I think it was incredibly irresponsible to go this year. And I didn't. That's the only reason. And you can watch the last video of every commentary. I used to play in the wigwams right here. This mega dairy that ran against both those two, Darren Perry and thing. This Gibson character tore the wigwams out here. Under investigation, stole millions of dollars. The wigwams are right here on this marsh where I grew up. That burial ground that I shot in that thing at Mount Fort, my grandparents used to, Adelia Meyer lived right there. She raised me. So, Chief Cherokee, when he was murdered there at Mount Fort, you take our elder, we take yours. Ralph Blanch lived right there. My grandma said, Jay Gibson, who lived right over there, was the curator when I was a little boy. He told me, yeah, a relative of this piece of shit. This kid's opposite of him, the mega dairy welfare, Mike Lee loving queen. Should be in a prison cell. He says, my grandpa told me, Kevin, when I was a kid, that he was the first one that graded that cemetery, and they're pushing up bones. Little soldiers, no doubt in my mind, buried there next to my dad. So Ralph Blanch is the first one buried in all of western Weber County. You take our elder, we take yours. And he put an arrow through his heart right there, right there. So Blake Moore and his family lines come out here. I'm friends with them. And I like Blake, by the way. Don't get me wrong, I like him. He's green, but I've got to get him going. You know, so right there at the Bear River Massacre, this falls back into Utah. Stair cycle settlement is an absolute disgrace. What a joke. I asked Sean Reyes there at the Bear River Massacre a couple years ago, it's online, if he was related to Jose Reyes, because there's a lot of talk. Look at this, look at this. Yep, that's a deer track. Nice, so there's one left, haven't killed it yet. So, the salmon. He made a point, came right back to me and made a point. Again, he's protecting Trump. He went to Nevada, but Stair Cycle can do whatever they want. I asked him about the SMRs. That's right there. Idaho National Lab. Utah's funding those. I asked him. He claimed he didn't know what they were. I asked our governor-elect at the time, Spencer Cox. He spoke. You know, that was the only year they ever went. The only way the year ever went, Spencer says, we're here this year in Utah because this is Utah territory. I says, no, it's not, Spencer. That's not what we were told. This is our governor. That's my point. Ignorant, selfish leader. Now, I don't think Blake's selfish. I like him a lot. He's got a lot. I mean, he's ignorant as it gets. He had no clue what these SMRs, you know, Utah's funding these things. That's the problem. That's why these lobbyists can just write these bills and show Utah legislators in policy. And I like Darren Perry, don't get me wrong. I like the guy, but you better take every word he says with a grain of, and these are not my words, these are Shoshone's words. These call themselves Shoshone here. They raised me. My mom was a teacher at the Intermountain Indian School. You know, that was all Navajo, but I was raised right here by him. You know, and West Weber Elementary, that Frank Lloyd Wright prairie style, they tore down. Yeah, they, why is in the bone marrow transfer? They'd never got away with it. It's unbelievable. So to go to the ceremony this year, I think is incredibly irresponsible. COVID-19 is ravishing through the Native community. The res is right there. You know, my guess is very few people would, and I'm like, I'm not going. I'm going to do the responsible thing. I always go, as you know. I've been going since I was a little kid. And by the way, my teacher right here, they tore her house down. T.L. Smith, yeah, his wife was my second grade teacher. Her sister was my first grade teacher. They were gems. We got taught well here. This is the first school district in the country that celebrated Earth Day, officially as a school district. These teachers were fantastic. She's the one that taught me. She says, Kevin, right there where you do know the Shoshone right here where we live, because I loved basketball when I was a kid. She's the one that because I was diagnosed as being autistic. She's like, no. And my grandma figured that out. He's, assy burger my ass. I'll tell you people they calling you autistic, they're calling you Asperger. I graduated at Weber High, me and Fawn McKay Brody, in 1978. I graduated 698 in a class of 699. Now think about that. I'd already had 2 years under my belt of college at Weber State University in an honors program. And I'm 698 of 699. I'm in the Weber State's honors program. When I went to Weber State, I got the class high in the history of Clyde Cooley's program. I got the class high in the history of Dr. Winter's programs. And I'm not a believer in degrees. I'm a believer in lifetime of education, Aaron Swartz, because I was taught by the Shoshone, the real Shoshone, the ones, they don't sit there and say thank you and wave a flag and say Jesus Christ prayer. Oh no. By the way, the Mormons did not do that. Did Brigham Young, and I misspoke, I says the MI6, the Mormon heirs to Joseph Smith to this day claim that Brigham Young was a MI6 Queen plant. That's Joseph Smith's people's words. So, go ask Ammon Bundy. Even he and I agree on one thing. It becomes as natural as occupying a fucking bird rip. So, the real Shoshone that raised me, they call me Sosogoya. I could write 1,000 books. You take our elder. They loved him. She wrote in her journal right there, Annie. My great-great-grandmother, she used to stand behind the big greasewood. Natives would come to the house right there. By the way, this fucker tore that house. Don't even get me going. Well, I'm in the bone marrow transplant. It's unbelievable, these famous stories. Little Soldier fought back. It's named Spanish Fork for a reason. They would come in here, the Spaniards, they came in here up through San Diego, they've been here for Father Escalante, long before Jim Bridger and Jedediah Smith. Who's the savages? Peter Skeen Ogden never set foot here. This is a great story, I got to tell it. So, me and some of the other historians who always go, I don't think they went. I know, I says, I'm not going this year, it's irresponsible. Kevin Sosogoya, that means to walk, to follow the food. My one friend, this Shoshone, says, yeah, they call us, it used to be Sosogoya, antelope, Sosogoya elk, Sosogoya deer, Sosogoya salmon, Duck Valley, right here. He says, they call us Sosogoya cheeseburger. So Peter Skeen Ogden never set foot in Ogden. Never. It was called Brownsville. So Brownsville, Captain Brown, Levi Hancock right here, fucking Martin, the Martin cart right there. They all ended up here. It's irony. Kaysville, right there. He lived right there. It's amazing how somebody, Abraham Hunsaker the first, that's the statue at Old Town. By the way, arrived in San Diego on January 29th, 1847. Same date, 16 years earlier. The gold setters, but we were all taught these. So, why is Ogden named Ogden? I'll tell you why. And so, Captain Brown was a big-time crook. He was selling land all over here by deeds written by the Spanish king. I've stood at Monterey. I've stood right there multiple times right there where they signed the document. This was Mexico. When the Mormons came out, they called it Deseret. This was Mexico. They came to get away from the United States government. They were flag burners. They hated the United States government. They fought with them for even when I was a kid, they were still burning flags. They were socialists. The Mormons were hardcore socialists. They shared everything, had their own canneries, had their own farms, had their own currency, had their own everything. Even when I was a kid, my grandfather right there, Leonard, he ran the church welfare farms for free. You know, Hunsaker Mill, that's the other side. They were socialists. They were hardcore socialists. That's just a fact. Jack. So here in West Weber, the first people that were here were in 48. They're right up there by the church, and it was the Bibees, who ended up being Utah Construction, which is GE today. They had some cows they were ranging out here. I have a decoy I found right there that I gave to the University of Utah. I found in a cave right here that they dated 4,000 years old. I gave it to them for free, just gave it. My Uncle Gib has hundreds of stuff out here. I'm a walking, talking encyclopedia historian, but no one wants to listen to me because they're all into this fake dynamic, you know. The natives were somehow the lost fucking Moronites versus Nephites. What a crock of shit. They were, I mean, DNA proves it. They were Asians. They came across the ice bridge. They've been here for at least 13. I do a lot of work in San Diego with the Kumeyaw. I do a lot of work here with the Shoshone, with the Navajo. My mom was a teacher at the Intermountain Indian. I could write a whole book about that school. You know, I had good teachers. They taught us this was a massacre. She taught me, she says, you know, Kevin, they played basketball right here. They played a game. They had a pole with a basket and everything. You know, the Canadian did not invent the peach basket. That's a total lie. It's a total lie. The natives played basketball. You ever been on the res and watched the basketball games to this day? You know how good they are? Huh. Why don't anybody play in college? Fuck, you ain't seen racism. You don't even fucking know racism. Pass out the smallpox blankets. In the middle of the fucking night, they fucking, Connors from Fort Ord fucking comes marching in. Did the Mormons order? I don't think so. So this is a great story. Liam, Abraham Hunsaker the first, all his wife, he had native sons too, didn't he? Liam. So he claims in his journal, which the Mormon Church hasn't retracted, you know, I have it. You know, I have Ike Potter's fucking original journal. My grandma was his last living. I have all this. They don't want to hear it. Ike was, you know, I hiked up there, Echo Canyon. Ike, that's where the rocks are piled up. He, you know, Puerto Rocco slit his throat and shot a 12-year-old kid in the fucking back up there at Echo in the fucking jail. It's funny because little Abe the Eight's up there ice fishing today, you know, and so right there, Ike's bloodline's up there ice fishing today. That was over a woman. They found him guilty in the Mormon courts. How many times? Lava, Idaho. Lava Hot. They left here and went to Lava Hot Springs, Idaho. That's where my mom was born and raised. Ella. Ike. Found not guilty in the courts. He spoke all 5 tribes' languages. All 5. Jedediah Smith, Jim Bridger, freaking Ike Potter. Did all the dirty work for all those years. Oh, he was train robbing for the Mormons. Huh. Build the fires to hold them off. You know, the Mormons held off the fucking United States government for fucking decades. Ike was their guy. Echo Canyon. They're afraid of him. So, right there by the Lava Hot Springs, Peter Ski and Ogden spent a winter there. Another operation was actually on the Snake River up there on the Treasure Valley, Ontario, Oregon. And Ogden went up there and settled it. So they're scrambling because Brown ended up being a big-time fucking crook. Ripped off everybody, was selling these deeds to all these landowners over here, whatever, and he didn't own a fucking thing. He had these fake fucking deeds signed by the Mexican king. Just remember, this was Mexico. They called it New Spain, which kills me. Fuck Father Escalante coming in. They were in here, back here on the backside. It's called Cash. It's called the Wasatch. That's French. The French for the first robbers in here. That means to hide. And the cash, of course, to hide the cash, you know. The cache of gold, the goods. On the backside, they would steal children, too. You know, at the Aguirre house, I've talked about that, you know, slavery. Little Soldier, they got one of them. Little Soldier lived here. He came right down the creek. He lived right here. They were right here. He lived here, right here. Not Spanish Fork. It's always been said we don't know where his grave. I know where his grave is. It's West Weaver Cemetery. It's buried right next to my dad, right next to my grandmother, Adelia Admira Tracy, Moses Tracy, said when you took our elder, we take yours, and they put an arrow through his heart. They came and they surrounded the cemetery, the mound. They buried mounds. It's Mount Ford up there. That marker that's on top of Mount Ford, my grandma, and then put it there. That's where their organic farm was, the Tracys. Right next to the Marriotts. Yeah, that Marriott, J. Mount Fort Junior High, Weber High was right there. So, Peter Skeen Ogden went up to the Treasure Valley and negotiated the settlement. And right then, because most so-called Manifest Destiny pioneers, they befriended the natives. They were against this killing. They were true, this whole Christian war when they sent across the citizen soldier, the Okies and the Arkies, to come just mass murder them. Most of the Mormons were totally against that. They were like, no, we're in this together. A lot of them learned to speak the language. In fact, Jim Bridger married the chief's daughter, so they were going to name it Bridger. And Wyoming's like, fuck you, that's ours. We already claimed Bridger, Wyoming. He's got his fort up there. This is a great story. So in 1846, the Donner Party, of course, gets stuck right here. 47, they're behind the Don Party 10 days at Names Monument. You can see them carved up on the wall. Jim Bridger meets with Brigham Young. Brigham Young's sick. They're 10 days already behind the Donner. He says, you'll never make it, and he says, you can't go through immigration. You're following Captain Hastings, who's a fucking liar. The Hastings cutoff. I've done lots of videos out there, which is the Energy Solutions dump site now. He says, you can't go over, what we call Immigration Canyon now. You got to go down Echo, the way that the fur traders have gone for years. Oh no, Hastings says he has a shortcut, and he told, the Reeds the same thing, and they killed the bear and ate each other. The late snowstorm was still the latest in the Sierras ever on October 31st. The Mormons fully intended to go to San Francisco. Hastings went by ship all the way down. They fully intended to go to San Francisco. Sure as shit, they got in the canyon. He lied. There was no trail. They smelled like their fucking soul. It was July the 24th, which is calendar the hottest day of the year here. It gets 103, 4, 5 degrees here. They stopped on the Wasatch right there in Salt Lake at, Energy Solutions freaking arena. And they all starved to death for the most part when he told them to come down the canyon. And so they decided to stay here. They stayed here by default. They were headed to San Francisco. And that's a fact. So they were going to call it, after they found out Brown was such a crook, they were going to call it Bridger. They're like, okay, Jedediah Smith. Oh, no, that conflicts with Joseph Smith. So, the first capital was out there at Corinne. Right here is the railroads meet, Abe Hunsaker, the first, that's him on the train with the two trains. That's him. The first SPUP freaking office was in his house, the Hunsaker Mill. I'm Abe's, the fourth grandson. He had all girls. So, the socialists. Kevin, you learn a trade by the time you're 16. It's funny because my cousins don't know that. I mean, it's amazing. So, they're scrambling for a name. Well, people here, because the native influence was giant here. The survivor, the last child that the Mormons found inside that pile, she lived in Ogden forever. She was famous in Ogden. Really famous in Ogden. And, Darren Perry won't tell you these stories because he's going to say, oh, thank you, United States, for coming in, wave flag. And Blake Moore will tell you, he cried on the floor, his first speech he ever gave on the floor. I helped get him elected. You run against this scumbag. Better than Rob, piece of shit Bishop. And I like the guy, but he's green as grass. Of course, it's better than, they got Burgess Owens in Salt Lake. Ben McAdams, the best congressman we ever had, vote him out because he's just going to block nuclear waste and put that fucking lunatic Operation Foxconn News in who has nothing to do with Utah. So it's irony, Blake Moore's up there with his kids, and we had to have the cops guard him, but I still support Trump after he tried to kill me. Darren Perry does the same thing. Thank you, United States, waves, flags. And I like Darren, don't get me wrong, but I'm friends with all the real Shoshone. They call me So Goya. They know my walking across the ocean. By the way, I'll tell you what native soul I have. When they did the White Buffalo in New York City, 2012, 2013, I was invited. I was in the bone marrow transplant center. They were going to blow it, They only do that once every God how many years? You know what they did it on? Fukushima. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now you know where my native Celtic native. So 13,000 years. I used to play in the wigwams right here. This fucking Goody Mormon Gibson fucking mega dairy welfare Mike Lee Queen tore them out. The Mormons brought asparagus and trees and planted. There was these big 150-year-old fucking beautiful fucking apple trees. He tore them out. He didn't even know on the ground why I was in the bone marrow transplants. Fucking, and they called themselves Christians. They named it Peter Skeen Ogden because Peter Skeen Ogden settled the skirmish. And they're like, well, he's in vogue. Let's name it. Got to name it after one of the fur rapers. The movie Revenant, DiCaprio ate by the bear, that scene's right there. It's based on Jedediah Smith and Jim Bridgers and William Glass's journals. They lived here. My family. Look, there's a deer track across there. It's the first one I've seen in a long time. Interesting. No snow. So there's your history. And I didn't go this year, because I felt like it was extremely irresponsible. I know who this virus is killing. I know who it's killing. It's ravishing the native community. And by the way, right before I got really, really sick with this poison in my body, I was on the res with some native friends in Blackfoot. Think about that a lot. So there's your history lesson. Write a book. This is a fucking book. Publish. Nobody's more nuclear energy. One last story. She real running? Did I fuck this one up too? Yeah, I made this. This is in honor of the hooker in the White House. Remember that? I don't care. Fucking psycho. So, I was there that day. So, Leah Little Wolf, who lives right up there, I'm friends with a lot of the natives. When Fukushima happened, one of the chief's daughters at Bristol Bay called me, who was living in Idaho by then. And she says, Kevin, let's flip the scan while I tell this story. I got to tell you the story. This is the early days of Fukushima. My dad's the chief. He painted his dreams. That's what they do. Paint their dreams. By the way, Lauren Farr Park was right there, and Chief Cherokee had just smoked the peace pipe with him and settled the skirmish, and then Stewart right there, arrow through his fucking head. Chief Cherokee lived right here, right here. I used to play in the wigwams right here. They said in this great journal, the only people that could get along with him was Ralph Blanch. My great-great-grandpa, nobody else dared live on this side over there because the river was too swift, blah, blah, but he got along with them. You take our elder, we take yours. So she said, Kevin, he painted his dreams and he paints all the animals, the whales, the birds, the bay, black, and all the animals dead laying black on the beach. So they said, this is in 2010. He died in 2011, 2 days before the Fukushima disaster. He was asked, well, what, another Exxon Valdez? He says, no. Nuclear energy. Come on, you got to go with that Mormon left. You got to be able to go with that Mormon left. Like I said, I know Darren really well. I helped get Blake Moore elected. Green as fucking grass. They tried to kill me and my family. The cops had to hide in my house, yet I support the guy who ordered it. Yeah. Sick fucking degenerate fuckers. The new River Massacre. SMRs, Idaho National Lab. Fukushima. What do the natives call it? The 7th, 8th generation. Oh boy, I caught that. By the way, the jackrabbits, the tundra swans, this was John Weber's own words. He said there were more birds right here on this marsh, and this fucking mega dairy creep fuckers drained it all off illegally. The EPA interviewed me right fucking here. The same EPA who just let Stericycle out there. They all know. Trying to spray right. I mean, this is one of the greatest environmental terrorists in the history of the world. That's why I was glad Blake Moore fucking won, because he ran. You know, head of the DNR, head of fucking the environmental quality, fucking with no fucking credentials. When I taught the environmental fucking class when we were #1 school business in the country. What the fuck? Stealing millions, fucking. Well, that's what they fucking, I mean. John Weaver said there were more birds. When I was a kid, this was incredible. This marsh, fucking one of the great resting places right there. That's where it dumps into the Great Salt Lake. It's incredible. I mean, hundreds of thousands of fucking geese and swans and tundras and, you know, every species of, by the millions, jackrabbits, muskrats, you name it. And they're all fucking gone. All. You're still waiting for the main event. Talk about a massacre post Fukushima. Kevin, so go ahead. Fucking walking the coast. I'll be in California again ASAP. I do a lot of work with the Kumeyaay. Where I stay is their sacred hallowed spot. Right there, PB on the fucking yoga park. That's their sacred hallowed spot. You know, they tore those marshes out. You know, PB Point and all that. That used to be marsh. They tore them out. The feds. I was standing at Old Town, you know, speaking of the 29th, that's the same day they got there. That statue at Old Town's Abe the First, my great-grandpa. You know, our lines have been in Pacific Beach since 1847. You know, the Hunsaker, the racetrack, White Earp's fucking James Hunsaker, you know, I can go on and on and on and on and on. Connor shot Liam in the fucking head right in front of Abe. That was Abe's native so-called adopted son. They weren't adopted. I know for a fact, I have cousins that are so incredibly beautiful, and I used to tell them all the time, you've got to be native. They got DNA. Oh, they're native. You know, Abe had lots of Shoshone freaking children, including Liam. When Connors was headed up there, right there in Manaway, Utah, in front of Abe, he shot him in the fucking head and killed him, Connors did. Connors is buried, I think, in the Salt Lake Cemetery. You're talking one of the evil, he's Scottish. You know, it's kind of like Donnie. One of the most, almost a lot of people out here are Scottish. I mean, you talk instruction Scots. The Eccles, the Brownies, they're Scottish, you know. It's called Ben Lomond Peak, fucking Ben Lomond High School, Highland, for a reason. I knew Mariner personally, by the way. He used to call me and my twin sister fucking Hansel and Gretel, you know, from my grandparents. I knew Walt Stegner personally from my grandparents. A lot of these people, sophisticated, stoic, incredible people. Walking, talking historians, and just remember this. In Native culture, anytime you speak, you always bring up your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Always. I tell my grandchildren this. They're going to learn. That's how you pass up the real knowledge. Generation to generation. They're called elders for a reason. They don't act like it anymore, do they? Stay in tune.